switched to our on-air coverage. We are on our live streams. We're continuing on Facebook Live. We now have a tornado warning, a very large tornado warning in effect for a radar indicated possible tornado. Okay, we're on air as we speak. We're breaking into coverage because we do have a tornado warning that is in effect. This is from a storm coming out of Tennessee, and this is just kind of an interesting looking storm, and you can see a wide swath of severe, well, we've got the one severe thunderstorm warning, but a wide swath of tornado warnings from Tennessee all the way back into south central Kentucky. And this includes really all of Monroe County and a good chunk of Cumberland County and also southern Metcalfe County. We're watching this storm here, and as we look at it, it definitely doesn't look like the typical tornado warned storm where you have a well-defined hook. But what's happening is as this bows out and moves to the northeast, you get some indentations right along the actual bowing part where you have some additional rotation. So with that being said, there's certainly the possibility that we are dealing with a tornado, maybe even two tornadoes within this comma feature here. There hasn't been any confirmation, but that's just what the potential is for this storm as it continues to move out of Tennessee and also into parts of Kentucky. So the latest tracker we have on this storm, 548 for Mount Zion. That is actually into southeastern Allen County. The storm is just passing by as we speak. You're in that tornado warning. Red Boiling Springs at 551, and that is over there in Macon County in Tennessee. Tompkinsville at 6:03. So you have about 15 minutes in Tompkinsville. Over there into Stalcup at 6:14. A bit more time in Burkesville at 6:20. So if you're just joining us, breaking news, a tornado warning now in effect for really all of Monroe County and a good chunk of Cumberland County. This does include far southeastern Allen County. Around the Mount Zion community, we do have this warning in effect. It also includes really the eastern part of Macon County in Tennessee and also parts of Clay County. So you can see this storm as it continues off to the northeast here. So here is Gamaliel. You are under the warning. You have about 5 minutes or so. You can see the community of Acresville also in that warning. And if somebody upstairs, can you flip the side monitors so that I can see myself? Because I'm just looking straight ahead. I see the camera, but our side monitors just have the ABC 13 logo on them. So if you can possibly get that switched over. Fountain Run also in this tornado warning as well. There's been another added severe thunderstorm warning to part of this storm that is producing possible tornadoes as it does continue to scoot on into Monroe County. But it is still, for the most part, in Tennessee, although part of it is continuing into southeastern parts of Allen County and definitely within some of these notches along this bowing segment here. This is where we could have that tornado. So anywhere in Monroe County, you want to be in your tornado safe zone right now. And for the community of Acresville, the storm is right by you. It's very, very close. And here is Gamaliel, the storm off to your west. And anywhere within this bow here, we could potentially have an isolated tornado develop. So you just have a few more minutes. Your safe zone, no matter where you are in a tornado warning, needs to be the lowest level interior closet in a bathroom, maybe a laundry room. And if you do have a basement, that is obviously the best place to be because you are put underground. But in that interior hallway, in a closet, in the laundry room, and in a bathroom, as long as there's no windows, obviously a bathroom can be more anchored down to the ground because of the piping. So that can actually be a very good, safe place. And even if it is up against an outside wall, if that's your only option, you don't have any other interior locations to go to, as long as there's no windows in there, that can be used as a tornado safe zone. So just a very unique look to this tornado warning because it does have a large area of real estate. The storm continuing to move into Monroe County, and there's just no good way of indicating exactly where we could have a tornado, but we have areas of rotation within this Boeing segment as it continues to move out of Tennessee and into far southeastern parts of Allen County. So it's starting to move from Allen County now more into Monroe County here in south central Kentucky. So anywhere in Monroe County, you're in the polygon. If you're in the polygon, you need to go to your tornado safe zone and stay there until the storm no longer poses a threat, until the warning comes to an end. And this warning extends pretty far to the east to include a good portion of Cumberland County, Burkesville, Pattonsburg. You're under the gun for this storm. You have a little bit of extra time to get to your safe zone. You still have maybe about 20-25 minutes before the storm actually heads your way. But no confirmed reports of tornadoes with this Boeing line here, but there is certainly the possibility. This is a very large warning that is for this Boeing segment that is coming out of Tennessee and about ready to move on through Monroe County. So if you're flipping on the television right now, I believe we had some hockey on before. Unfortunately, we have to cut in and bring you news that we do have a tornado warning that is in effect. And that does include Monroe County and also a good portion of Cumberland County, far southern Metcalfe County, also under this warning. We've been watching the storm, came out of the Nashville metro area, and really the way it has been moving, it's been really chugging along to the northeast. And within this bow here, we could certainly have the potential for an isolated tornado. And there's just, again, no well-defined area of rotation. Could have multiple areas of rotation as we stop the map here. And if you're in the warning area, if your phone is going off, if your phone has already gone off, which hopefully it has, then you need to be in your tornado safe zone. We're looking at velocity here, but likely not going to see anything good. We'll certainly keep an eye on this here, but this is where obviously we have some of the stronger wind, but some of those little notches, that's where you can potentially get that spin up. So you're dealing with some very strong winds. I can tell you winds are very strong in Fountain Run as well as Acresville. Those could just be straight line winds, but certainly the potential exists for a tornado. So stay in your safe zone, let those winds eventually die down, but the strongest winds pushing through Acresville and Fountain Run. Tompkinsville, winds will really start to pick up here soon. In a couple of minutes, we'll kind of flip over to our Tompkinsville camera in Monroe County so we can track this storm as it moves on in. Our friends in Tennessee, keeping an eye on Hermitage Springs under that warning. And here's a look from Tompkinsville, and you can see we certainly have that shelf cloud moving on in. This is the leading edge of the storms here, and so this is where our fiercer winds are going to be as the storm continues to move your way. So Tompkinsville, be in your safe zone right now. Anywhere in Monroe County, you need to be in your safe zone as we speak, because we do have a tornado warning in effect for all of Monroe County, and that will continue for over the next 30 minutes here. Davis, how long does this warning go until?
That is in effect until 6:30.
So 6:30, so we got 35 minutes on this warning, but for you in Tompkinsville, this is a live look as we are tracking the storm your way, this supercell thunderstorm, this Boeing storm that is potentially producing isolated tornadoes. It's a very broad area of rotation, but within the actual line itself, the bowing part of the storm, we could have multiple areas of rotation. So spin-up tornadoes, definitely a possibility, and there's certainly a likelihood that we get one that tries to develop from this storm as it moves through Monroe County. So please be in your safe zone anywhere in Monroe County, good portion of Cumberland County. Don't be relying on the outdoor sirens. Don't be thinking, well, I haven't heard the outdoor siren. You're most likely not going to if you're inside. But if it's a warning that's going off on your phone, you're in the polygon. That includes our friends in Burkesville. And also over there into Persimmon, we do have that warning in effect. And really, this includes, again, all of Monroe County. For you in Metcalfe County, you might be wondering, in Edmonton, you're just to the north of the warning. So you're just outside. There's Edmonton right there. There's Glasgow. You just dealt with a gusty storm, and Temple Hill still dealing with that, a stronger storm as it moves on through. But we're watching this storm here as we kind of pan the map back down to the south. If you're just joining us, tornado warning is in effect for Monroe County. So over there in Flippin, Gamaliel, the storm is moving on in. We certainly will have strong winds with this, probably a little bit of hail, but there is definitely the potential for a tornado. But straight line winds will be very strong with this one here. There's a lot of movement with the winds, and when you get enough of that twisting motion, that is when you can certainly get that tornado to touch down. So the storm moving into Gamaliel as we speak. Mudlick, you're also included in this warning. It's just torrents of rain, very gusty winds, still pretty rough over there in Fountain Run in Acresville. So remain in your safe zone. Let's let this thing pass on by. But Tompkinsville, you have probably another 5 minutes or so. Persimmon, about 10 minutes or so. Into Cumberland County, you've got some extra time. But with these Boeing storms, they move very, very fast. And with this, there's just a ton of rainfall. Obviously, rain is going to be a big concern. We're dealing with a severe weather threat right now for some of our eastern counties in our WBKO viewing area. That's the reason why we are live on air. We will cover this tornado warning until it does expire. We're coming up at 5:58. And so if you are hopping on ABC, watching us live, we are in tornado coverage because we do have a tornado warning that is in effect for Monroe County. And Gamaliel, the storm right by you. Also Mudlick, the storm approaching. But you can see, again, we have this kind of bend in the storm here. Let's pause radar here, Davis. So when we pause it, you can see that curvature feature there. And this is a broad area of winds here. This is a wide area of winds that we're dealing with, but within this a strong wind field on this storm here, which extends really all the way from basically the Monroe and Barron County line all the way down towards Clay and Macon County in Tennessee. Within this area of very strong winds, we could certainly have additional areas of rotation, and that's where we could potentially get that isolated tornado. So the storm approaching Tompkinsville. Let's go back to that camera. Let's watch this giant shelf cloud move on in, because that's certainly what we'll be watching here. You can see it. Yeah, you can see it out in the distance. It is starting to sweep on in. So we're going to have some very strong winds. I can guarantee that. We'll have some very strong winds in Tompkinsville here shortly, but we certainly do have the potential for a spin-up tornado as we get that live look outside in Tompkinsville. This is in Tompkinsville, literally looking out towards the storm. There's the shelf cloud associated with the storm as it continues to move over your way. So let's go back to radar really quick. We'll kind of go back and forth here and keep breaking things down. Radar resets, so we got to zoom back in to the storm. Thank you very much, Davis. We are watching this storm here We've lost maybe a couple of warnings over there into parts of Tennessee, but of course gained them here in Kentucky. Gamaliel, please be in your safe zone. You're dealing with some pretty fierce winds as we speak. I can tell you winds guaranteed to probably be up to about 50 miles per hour at least. And we also have the potential for tornadoes, mudlick, same deal, storm knocking on your door. All of Monroe County is under this tornado warning. So if you live in Monroe County, if your address is in Monroe County, you need to be in your tornado safe zone right now, which for many folks is an interior closet, a bathroom, first floor or basement if you've got it. If you do live in a mobile home, especially if you're maybe a little bit closer to the Monroe County, Cumberland County line, and you can really get out of there quickly and head to a more well-built structure, you have a little bit of time. Even in Tompkinsville, if it's like a next-door neighbor, you still have a little bit of time, but we don't want folks like running out of their location as storms are moving on in. So if you can get out of your trailer or your mobile home and you can get to a well-built structure, for some locations, you still have a little bit of time, including Tompkinsville, especially if we're talking about just going to a neighbor's house. So timing things out, mudlick, the storm is basically right over you. So the worst of the weather is moving in. Just hunker down where you are at in your tornado zone. In Tompkinsville, we've got about another 2 minutes before the storm really moves your way, so you don't really have much time. Meshack, we're talking about 10 minutes, and then of course as we continue over there into parts of Cumberland County, we've got about 6:22 in Burkesville, so another 20 minutes for you. And we're talking about this right here. This is a very, very large tornado warning polygon that's in effect for possibly some spin-up tornadoes within this comma feature here. So now let's go back to that camera in Tompkinsville so we can get a look at the storm as it continues to move on in. So yeah, here's the shelf cloud itself. The storm is getting closer. A lot of folks will see this, and especially when you're under a tornado warning, automatically think that this is the tornado itself. But this is just the leading edge. You can certainly get a tornado to develop at really any moment as we do deal with those powerful winds. This is central Monroe County in Tompkinsville as we look off towards the west as we are watching this rather fierce storm move on in. And what we really look for, and this is where people get general clouds and tornadoes kind of confused. You look for a lowering in the sky, and a lot of times there's a lot of turbulence underneath that shelf cloud, and so it can often look like tornadoes. So here comes the shelf cloud itself, and if we would get a tornado just based on how this looks on radar, it could certainly be a quick developing tornado. But what we're seeing right here, this is just the shelf cloud. There's just going to be a lot of movement. You're going to see kind of some ups and downs every once in a while, a lot of turbulence along this. And of course, we're kind of interesting feature we're seeing. This is the courthouse here, and obviously you can really see how these clouds are moving quite a bit as they continue to make their way into a central Monroe County. So this is a live look outside in Tompkinsville as we continue with that tornado warning. And there's very strong winds about to move in here within the next couple of minutes. Of course, we showed you that tracker before, and sometimes that can be a minute or two off. We want to give you a general idea of when the storm is going to arrive. But of course, with the warning in place, the warning's been in place now, seems like for the last 15, 20 minutes. So with that being said, remain in your safe zone as the storm passes on by.
David, one thing just to add to, with as fast as this storm is moving, we want to just make sure that, if it's not raining there yet, and I know we probably have this cloud out there and it looks very photogenic.
Let's zoom into the storm here. Let's zoom into the storm as we're watching, because I kind of want to get back to that camera here in Okay, so the storm's moving over. Okay, so we're definitely getting like the leading edge. Let's go back to that camera in Tompkinsville because I just thought I noticed something kind of interesting. Okay, what you're seeing right here is the rain shaft as it moves on in. This is what was creeping into the picture before, but yeah, I mean, look at this. This is a well-defined rain shaft here, and so I mean, the winds are about to really pick up. This camera view is going to really start rocking here as the strongest part of this storm continues to make the move on in. It's just interesting. Yeah, okay, so the camera is really rocking now as we're getting some very strong winds here. Again, this is Tompkinsville. This is in central Monroe County as the storm that has the possibility of producing a tornado moves on in. So here we go with the fierce winds really picking on up. Please remain in your safe zone as we continue to deal with this storm. It's going to sound, yeah, really, really bad outside. All of us, if you're in that tornado warning, you're likely going to deal with winds of at least 40, 50 miles per hour as this continues to move through. And we'll show you this weather cam as long as power will let us. A lot of times we lose power in these storms as they move on through. But this is for a tornado warned storm in Tompkinsville. If you're anywhere, if you live anywhere around Tompkinsville, if your address is in Monroe County, be in your safe zone. Continue to remain there, and we'll let you know when you can come on out. But right now, you're dealing with the worst of the storm. As it moves on into central Monroe County, you're getting the forceful winds associated with the leading edge of these storms. As we were clearly watching the rain come on in, and with the onset of the rain, you're obviously going to be dealing with some pretty powerful winds as the storm is moving on through. This is all part of a very large tornado warning polygon that is in effect. And this storm originated around Nashville, and it's been moving very quickly off to the northeast. So we've still got some pretty wicked winds here. I mean, you can see how fast these storms literally blow through because it's not looking as bad now in Tompkinsville. Still can see folks out and about. These are very dangerous times to be traveling when you do have a tornado warning, and the storm that could be producing the tornadoes is moving on in. So live look again in Tompkinsville. Just wanted to stick with this view, let the storm pass on by, especially when you get some very interesting looking cloud features that often whenever a storm moves in, you see those clouds, they look very low to the ground, and folks automatically think that is the tornado. So looks like the worst of the storm is now passing on through. So now, Davis, we can head back to radar to get a little update on other locations that are in the zone right now. So as we look at the map here, this is the tornado warning polygon that is in effect for all of Monroe County and a good portion of Cumberland County. And this is what just pushed through Tompkinsville. We'll get a pause on radar. Here's the community of Persimmon here. So be in your safe zone. Wind's about to get pretty fierce. Meshack. So the storm has just passed to the east of Tompkinsville, but remain in your tornado shelter. We still have that warning in effect. And of course, we've just got torrential rainfall. Same story for places like Gamaliel back into a Flippin towards Mount Herman, the western side of the county, western and central part of the county dealing with torrential rainfall. But now in Persimmon, remain in your safe zone. Again, this polygon is very, very large, including all of Monroe County and a good portion of Cumberland County. And this also includes far southern sections of Metcalfe County because of the way this storm is bowing. I mean, it's kind of bowing off to the northeast here. But even the southern end of this bow here, it could certainly produce an isolated tornado for southern parts of the county, closer to the state line, closer to the Tennessee-Kentucky line. That goes for both Monroe and Cumberland County. For those areas closer to the state line, we could certainly have those winds up to 60 miles per hour, and also that tornado threat. Where you see the bowing right here, although it's not looking as well pronounced as it was before, that is definitely where you have some of the stronger winds right in there. So Persimmon, the storm is essentially right over you. Otia at 6:12, so that's just the next 2 minutes. There's Otia right here. Here's Meshack. We've got just about 3 minutes. Cloyd's Landing at 6:17. Stallcup at 6:19. Grider at 6:21, so 11 minutes. Burkesville, you're at about 13 minutes until this storm gets to you. And you can see towards Bow and Modoc, the storm also heading your way within the next 15 minutes or so. There's Burkesville on the map. Again, you've got just about 15 minutes or so. The storm itself is still over in Monroe County. So if you're in Cumberland County, you're looking for the safe zone in your house, well, if you're in a mobile home, it's best to try to get out and seek shelter at a well-built structure. And that can often just be a neighbor nearby. Seek shelter with them. And if you're in a home and you have a basement, just head down to the basement. If not, lowest level interior closets, a bathroom, a laundry room, that's going to be the best and most safe location for you to be. 6:11, as we kind of recap what we're watching. A few hours ago, we started getting a few severe thunderstorm warnings in. Then we got a tornado warning around Nashville, and this storm has continued to hold its own as it moves into Kentucky and continues to move across eastern parts of Monroe County. So Meshack being your safe zone right now, and even portions of far southeastern Metcalfe County, you guys are included in this warning. So that's just outside of Summer Shade. So this is really, if you live near the Metcalfe County line with Monroe County or Cumberland County, you are under that warning. So be in your safe zone. Again, looking at this, really the strongest part of it is likely towards the apex. But within this bow here, you can see little notches, and that's where you can just have enough of a spin up. That's where you can get your spin up tornado. And there's a lot of times in which when we talk about spin up tornadoes along a bowing line like this, they're normally not the powerful tornadoes, but still they're tornadoes nonetheless. And so you still need to take shelter and definitely treat this very serious, because it is a very serious situation. In addition to the tornado threat, we certainly have some strong damaging winds, 50, maybe up to 60 miles per hour, possibly some hail in there, but really it's been the wind and the potential for tornadoes that has been the greatest threat with these storms as they do develop. Davis, any reports coming in about this storm?
As of right now, so the National Weather Service, I'm not seeing any sort of reports come in, which is typically good. No news is good news. That we're not necessarily seeing anything from it, but no word yet either if they are planning on extending this further to the east. The storm is moving at 65 miles an hour, so this is definitely a storm you do not want to be outside trying to take a look at it or take photos. You just really want to head to your safe spot pretty soon, just because of how fast it's moving. And again, it is getting ready to enter into portions of Cumberland County. So if you're in Cumberland County, especially the southwest portion and central Cumberland County, you need to be in your safe space immediately. This warning is still in effect for another 15 minutes until 6:30.
Looks like it's been maybe trimmed back just a little bit, or it's likely to get trimmed back here pretty soon as the threat really comes down for western parts of Monroe County. But still, you're in that warning, so you can still stay in that safe zone if you're in Tompkinsville or an area located in western Monroe County. But Cloyd's Landing here, storm is knocking on your doorstep again. This is not a traditional like supercell that is with real well-defined rotation. This is a line, this is a curving line, this is a bowing line of storms. And we know they're producing strong winds, but within some of these little nooks and crannies here, that is where we potentially could have that isolated tornado threat. So we're not looking at one specific spot along this line. We're looking at the system as a whole here. So that's the reason why this tornado warning is so large, just to cover the fact that we could have spin-up tornadoes in different areas. But of course, if there ends up being any damage with this storm system here, the National Weather Service may go out and investigate it further to see if it's possibly any sort of tornado damage. But it does look like now the tornado warning has been trimmed back. It still just includes Tompkinsville, although Tompkinsville right now, your situation's looking pretty good. But for areas of western Monroe County, you can be given the clear to get out of your tornado shelter, as this warning has been trimmed back. But if you are in Cumberland County, you've had a little time now to be able to get to your safe spot. And I know a lot of folks watch our stream on their phone. If you do watch it on the television, and let's say your tornado safe zone's further from that television, just turn up the TV so you can hear me, or just take our live coverage right on into your tornado safe spot so we can continue to give you an update of exactly where the storm is. But it's starting to approach and even cross on over into far western Cumberland County. And so over there into Cloyd's Landing, Stalcup, we do have the storm kind of knocking on your door. Otia dealing with some very powerful winds as we speak. Vernon, you're about to get in on the strong winds. Again, just because you get the strong winds in your tornado warning doesn't mean that it's direct winds from a tornado. Certainly, you're more likely here to actually get strong straight line winds. But with the way this bow is here, there are some areas of rotation where you can get that spin-up tornado. So we are monitoring this storm. Looks like to the north in Metcalfe County, we have a severe thunderstorm warning in effect. And that includes Edmonton, and that's likely because we could have maybe winds up to 60 miles per hour, also including far southern parts of Greene County. Of course, our focus right now with our coverage on air is this tornado warning. Well, not just our coverage on air, but on our live streams and also Facebook Live. We're tracking this potential tornadic storm as it's now getting closer to Burkesville. The storm is moving at a pretty good clip. This warning does continue until 6:30, and we'll have to see if there's any extension added to this. But once this warning expires and we're all out of the warnings, we can give you the clear to get out of your tornado safe spot. But we will still continue with our coverage on our live streams and on Facebook Live. But we're watching the storm as it pushes through Meshack. Remain in your safe zone. Get prepared quickly in Burkesville. The storm itself is moving your way. This has the look of strong winds. I can tell you you're going to have some strong winds in Burkesville. That's guaranteed. All of us guaranteed to see some strong winds within this warning polygon. But within that line, within this bowing segment here, you can see some notches. It looks just kind of wrinkly. Again, you can potentially get that spin up. That's the reason why we're not like overly zoomed in on the map here, because this is how big the polygon is. It's a very large polygon that we normally don't cover tornado warnings with polygons this large, but when the National Weather Service is keeping an eye on a line or a bowing line of storms, and there's the possibility of some areas of rotation within that bowing line, that is when you can possibly have multiple areas of rotation. And so we can't pick out a specific spot, but rather just put everyone under the tornado warning just because there is that potential. But Burkesville storm will be arriving here pretty shortly. Peytonsburg as well, Kettle. And Davis, if you can prepare our Burkesville camera. Be interested to see that. That one takes a little bit of a larger shot of the city of Burkesville.
And that looks like it's actually down right now.
Okay, so our Burkesville cam not working, and that often can happen when we have these storms that produce significant winds. Not sure about the power outage situation for some of us, but that's another concern, obviously, with these storms, dealing with power outages. And of course, after the storms, we have the flooding potential. All of us continue with the flood watch. We're monitoring water levels across the area. We've already had, significant flooding. We've got more flooding in the forecast as we get into the night. But the latest here, we're watching a tornado-warned storm as it continues out of Monroe County and pushing on into Cumberland County. So Burkesville being your safe zone, Kettle as well. Paytonsburg, you need to be in your safe zone. Even Willis Creek, you're kind of right on the edge of the warning. This warning actually goes all the way out to the Cumberland-Clinton County line. So this includes most of Cumberland County. The storm has almost completely cleared Monroe County, but you can see this part of it extends into southeastern Monroe County. We've got some very strong winds, but again, some of these little notches, that's where you have to watch for the potential for some rotation as wind kind of goes in and then winds come out. So that's where you can get some of that rotation right there. And there are a few little notches that show up on each radar scan. Now, you might see that for a minute, then it disappears and shows up somewhere else. So that's what we're watching for in this comma feature of storms here. We're looking for those notches that could indicate some of that rotation and potentially that a tornado formation. So be in your tornado safe zone. Burkesville storm bearing down on Burkesville and Kettle in a central Cumberland County. We're at 6:22. This warning does continue until 6:30. And the warning goes all the way out to the Clinton County line. So if you're out there in Clinton County, just be aware that we have a tornadic storm to your west, and be prepared to possibly seek shelter in your safe zone if you're added to a tornado warning. But right now, the warning is basically for Cumberland County, but still into far eastern and southeastern portions of Monroe County. That is where we do have the potential for still winds up to 60 miles per hour. And that potential for isolated tornadoes. So the situation starting to improve over there in Meshack. Tompkinsville, you're technically still in the warning, but things looking pretty good for you right now. This warning will likely get trimmed back even more. Burkesville being your safe zone. Winds are getting pretty fierce, likely up to about 50, 60 miles per hour. Potential in there for an isolated tornado. And even though within this comma feature, I can tell you the chances of a strong tornado are pretty limited. Still an EF0, EF1 can't be totally ruled out. And we're talking about, winds on the order of maybe 80, 90 miles per hour here.
David, quick update.
Yes.
The National Weather Service in Louisville, they are not seeing the rotation as tight, so they will likely not extend the tornado warning, but will likely opt in for a severe thunderstorm warning with a tornado possible tag. Okay,
so that's the latest on this storm. Certainly never really had a great area of rotation, but certainly just with this very broad area here of curving thunderstorms. Obviously, within this feature here, you can get those spin-ups, but still, please be in your safe zone in Burkesville as the storm is heading your way. We've got another 6 minutes with this tornado warning. Same for Kettle over there into Willis Creek. Be in your safe zone. Let's let this storm pass on by. Tompkinsville, right now you're in pretty good shape here. We'll let this tornado warning expire, and then you can emerge from your safe zone, but the threat is really over for Tompkinsville as well as Persimmon. Meshack, things are getting better. Patronsburg, the storm is bearing down on you. Winds likely with this of 50, 60 miles per hour. Really, wind is going to be the greatest likelihood, but tornadoes are certainly possible, and that's the reason why we do have the tornado warning polygon, which goes all the way out to the Clinton County line. Here is Dale Hollow Lake, and so to put things into reference, that storm, it will be near the lake here within the next couple of minutes. And again, out there into Albany, it's likely that it will just be a severe thunderstorm warning that covers the storm as it continues your way. So you'll have to prepare for maybe wind gusts up to 60 miles per hour. But we're at 6:26. We are still on air, but once this warning expires, we'll get off air, we'll send it back to programming, and we will continue some more of our coverage on our live stream as we're tracking storms through the area. So we've now been on for an extended period of time because once the first storm developed, we started getting more, a couple of severe thunderstorm warnings, and then we inevitably ended up with the tornado warning. So Burkesville, be in your safe zone. The storm is really bearing down on you right now. You're probably experiencing those fierce winds. If you're listening from your tornado safe spot, you can probably hear the wind just smacking up against your home, especially if the windows are facing the west. You're getting that strong westerly wind come on in. So it sounds pretty scary outside. Maybe some areas of hail, but just stay in your safe zone. You're in the best spot to ride this storm out. We have all really been troopers the last several days dealing with multiple rounds of severe weather and, of course, more flooding. So I know we are weather weary, but we are making it through. And I can tell you, once we really get into Sunday, our weather threats will certainly be minimal, but we're still going to be dealing with the flooding, unfortunately. But we continue with that tornado warning that goes until 6:30. We're sitting at 6:27. Storm basically on top of Burkesville as it continues to the east. There's Modoc. You're kind of on the edge of this warning here. There may be a chance that it actually expires before it reaches you, but I can tell you that the storm itself is still going to produce winds up to about maybe 50, 60 miles per hour. And with how wet it's been lately, trees being uprooted, certainly a decent threat with any of these warned storms, whether it's tornado warning, severe thunderstorm warning, having uprooted trees, just broken branches, things like that, maybe some power outages. The ground, of course, is super saturated, and with the leaves coming in on the trees, they're catching more of this wind, and that can obviously cause them to fall over and the tree to get uprooted. So we're at 6:27, 6:28 right now as the storm continues to move through Burkesville and in Cumberland County. So we still continue with that tornado warning. And the National Weather Service continuing discussion. Looks like, again, we don't have any real well-defined area of rotation. You can see some of these little notches, these little nooks, indicating maybe some rotation within this line. And a lot of times that's what happens when you have more of these linear features. And that's, as of late, we've been dealing with a ton of squall lines, these lines of storms or these Boeing storms. And normally within these lines, the greatest threat is going to be wind, but sometimes with the different speed of the different parts of the line, the individual storms within the line, some of them are moving at different speeds, you can sometimes get that rotation. That's what we mean when we say the spin-up tornado risk. A lot of times when you get a spin-up tornado, it's normally going to be a weaker tornado. It's going to be one that, could maybe only be producing winds of 70, 80 miles per hour, but within the main line, you could be dealing with wind gusts up to 65, even 70 miles per hour. So the straight line wind is almost just as strong as the tornado. Not to downplay the threat, but just want to let you know that's what we generally mean when we talk about a spin-up tornado. But there are times in which you got a more powerful squall line and more potent storms where they can be stronger. So it looks like right now that we've got this big old severe thunderstorm warning in effect that is now covering this storm here as it continues to move through eastern parts of our viewing area. So this tornado warning is about to expire here any moment, and when it does, again, you can come out of your safe zone. But for far eastern parts of Cumberland County, just to let you know, I mean, winds are still very strong on this, so the tornado warning has been allowed to expire. And so if you haven't dealt with the fierce winds just yet and you were just in that tornado warning, again, stay inside, just away from windows. But right now we do have just a severe thunderstorm warning in effect. If you would like to continue with our weather coverage, you can head over to our website, WBKO.com. And we do have a tab that mentions our live streams. If you have the WBKO First Alert weather app, you can also get on our live stream that way, or we are also on Facebook Live. But because the tornado warning has now been allowed to expire, we're going to send it back to regularly scheduled programming, but continue on the live stream and Facebook Live.